It pains me to hear people say, and I'm a D1 coach, and I played D1.
Mm-hmm.
Big freaking deal.
Mm-hmm.
It really pains me to hear people say, or parents say, yeah, my kid got a Division I scholarship. I mean, that's not the purpose of going to college, and there are schools with just as good education and many times better athletic programs that are not in Division I.
At Stanford for 38 years, won 17 championships, multiple Hall of Famer. You become coach of many professional athletes as well, that starting from, John McEnroe, Gene Mayer, Alexander Mayer. I mean, you have plenty to share with us, because this is what we want to bring. We want to bring knowledge from your side to the new era of athletes. And what's the difference, back in the day when you used to be a coach and when you used to be an athlete, and the difference now, and how can we learn from your experience?
Well, Ronnie, first of all, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I hope that some of what I say has some relevance to somebody out there. I'll do my best for you. And how did I start tennis? That I didn't want to play tennis. My gosh, I'm a farm boy. My dad was a farmer, and I grew up riding my horse, had my 22 to shoot squirrels with, and I was in heaven, and worked on it a little bit. And my mom one day says, "You're going to take a tennis lesson." My parents didn't play at all. So unlike so many of us that get a sport because our parents are involved in it, that was not, my dad had played football in college a little bit and wrestled a little bit, but nothing related to tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And so those were the sports basketball, football, baseball, those are the sports I was more familiar with. But I didn't want to go around town, basically a farm town, in little white shorts. So I said, no, I'm not going to take a tennis lesson. Why would I want to do that? My mom simply said, well, do you want to ride your horse this summer? And so
there you are.
a moment of silence, and that solved that one. And I was really lucky, Ronnie, because my coach was and I didn't know at the time, but he was the coach of a top 10 women's player in the Women's Pro Tour. Nancy Chafee was her name. She married Ralph Kiner, the great baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
But he made everything every ball I hit, he equated it to another sport. So all of a sudden, it wasn't a sissy sport. It was really exciting for me in that lesson to have the next ball hit to me so I could try to return it. Mm-hmm. In those days, the heavyweight champion of the world was Rocky Marciano. So he would say things like, step into the hit like Rocky Marciano steps into punch. Watch the ball come off the racket as Ralph Kiner watched it come out of the pitcher's hand. And all of a sudden I said, hey, this sport's got something. I couldn't wait. He made hitting that ball so exciting, which I think is the mark of any good teacher. You want to make what you're teaching exciting for your pupils. And that taught me a big lesson that really served me well later on the rest of my life. But he made everything exciting, and I was hooked from that moment on. I continued with other sports a little bit, but tennis became my love.
So how long it took you to have the passion? Like you say, okay, this is it. This is the sport. This is me right now.
The first ball I hit, he made so exciting to me that I hit it well, and that from that moment on, I kept playing during high school. I played a little football, and I continued to play basketball, but tennis was my sport. And I couldn't play in the summer. And in tennis, it's a year-round sport mostly, and I couldn't play in the summer tournaments because I had to work on the ranch very much. So I finally got a ranking, which is how you measure how you're doing in tennis largely with other people your own age. I finally got a minuscule ranking of number 18 in Southern California my last year before I went to college. Mm-hmm. So even though I had played there were always tournaments during the school year that were good tournaments, and I would play those, and I was doing fairly well, not great, but fairly well, but enough so that when I applied to Stanford, which like an idiot was the only place I applied to. I never make that mistake. You always apply several places. The coach at least knew who I was, and I don't think he was really anxious, especially to have me on his team to make the team better, but I'm sure he put a good word in for the admissions office for me, and I ended up at Stanford and was able to. In those days, freshmen couldn't play in the varsity, so I started out as number 4 or 5 on our freshman team.
Okay.
The NCAA wouldn't let freshmen play. It was, you had to have a year to get acclimatized to school, which isn't a bad rule in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I did improve at playing tennis every day and having good competition every day. And by the time I left Stanford, I redshirted 1 year because I had an anatomy lab as a PE major where you're actually dissecting a human body.
Mm-hmm.
Formaldehyde, the smell of damn formaldehyde every day for 3 hours, all winter quarter long. I couldn't practice tennis because I had that lab. So I went my 5th year and got my master's and played my 5th year. And by that time, I was one of the better, not the greatest player in college tennis by a long means, but one of the better players in college tennis. And not even one of my own team, but it was a good team.
And then after you did that in Stanford, your mentality was to play professional as well, or you say, okay, this is it. I want to become a coach soon enough. How long it clicked for you to be a coach right there?
Well, that's a great question. In those days, there was nothing much beyond, in tennis at least, nothing much beyond college. All the players went to college. In fact, in all sports, because they didn't stay in college, they went in the military draft and they lost that opportunity. So you were in college for pretty much 4 years, everybody in every sport.
Okay.
And pro sports was nothing like it is today. In fact, open tennis, where pros and amateurs could play in the same event, did not start until 1968. And I graduated from college. I got my master's in 1960. So there wasn't really that option. Pro tennis in those days was Jack Kramer, who was the world's best player, trying to sign a Pancho Gonzalez or Rod Laver or someone like that to a contract to barnstorm in different high school gyms and occasionally in a big city auditorium throughout the country for 6 months. And whoever won the most head-to-head matches was the world champion, so to speak. Okay. I remember they would come to my little town of Ventura, roll out a carpet in high school gym in the afternoon, play a match that night with 1,000 or 2,000 people there, roll the canvas court back up, put it in the back of their van and head off to the next city. Next little town, and that was pro tennis. So there wasn't really a future in it, and I could have played as an amateur in the circuit then, but if I wanted to, but it was expensive, and I was lucky to be able to get a teaching job at a local high school, and also as a teaching pro at a club at the same time. They just married together beautifully, and I didn't want to pass up an opportunity, so I went to work and then been loving my hobby ever since.
I love it. It's insane. So back in the day, I imagine you didn't have no sponsors like we have right now. You didn't have, the social media is just an unbelievable, a new era right now. But back in the day, it was probably tougher. And that's what I see too as well in baseball, related to baseball. There was a really tough to get into the major leagues, and it's the same as a professional tennis right there. So if you have to pay for your own packet, imagine. I mean, there's no future right there, right?
Well, that's true. There really wasn't. They call it amateurism because the very best amateurs in the world would get under the cover payments to appear in certain tournaments and play. Mm-hmm. So they did have. There was a way they got paid, and that some of the travel, and they got parties with all the beautiful women, and there were ways to make it nice for them, but it wasn't really something I cared to do, and I had a great job opportunity, which I really was excited to get into. Mm-hmm. In those days, it was a different world in college as well. There really wasn't in my sport of tennis, and in most sports, there wasn't a lot of recruiting. In most sports, the coach would write a player, or call a player, but the player would really. It was so much different recruiting wise. There weren't big recruiting budgets in those days. The college staffs, like football, might have had 3 or 4 people on their staff, an offensive coach, a defensive coach, and the head coach, maybe a scout. In tennis, there was one coach, no assistant coaches in most sports. And it was a very different world. In fact, at Stanford, as an example, and this was not unusual, at Stanford, we gave scholarships only sparingly, and only to when I started college in the fall of 1955, a couple of my buddies in the football team had partial scholarships. They didn't give more than that. You got your tuition maybe, but all the athletes, including all American football players and basketball players at Stanford, would work serving tables waiting on tables in a dormitory, serving meals and cleaning it up after the meals were over in exchange for their meals. And they'd work in our corporation yard or somewhere else in the university to pay for their room. So it was a different thing then. It was. I just hope that people today appreciate the fact there are scholarships for athletes. And I would say this, that's a nice thing, but never feel as an athlete, if you don't get a scholarship, that doesn't put you down. If you're good enough, you're going to play, because the coach's job depends upon how you do. And especially a sport like mine in tennis, in men's tennis, we have 6 starters on our team. And yet only 4.5, the equivalent of 4.5 of those players get scholarships. Men's volleyball's 4.5 out of 10 or 12, whatever it is. Whereas with Title IX, the women have 8 scholarships. When I started coaching, we were able to have full scholarships. About the time full scholarships started. In Stanford, it was about mid-60s. And when I came, they started issuing scholarships a little bit. And when I was an athlete, and when I came back as a coach, they helped me out. I actually had 8 players on scholarship, full scholarship at one time. And with Title IX, I got cut back to 5, and then pretty quickly back to 4, the equivalent of 4.5. So to me, the most valuable recruit, Ronnie, was the guy who could come for free and didn't make getting a scholarship an ego trip. So yeah, I got a scholarship here. I got a scholarship here. It wasn't an ego thing. It was, if he was good, he was going to play number 1. And I've had several players, my best players, even players who have won the NCAA championship or got to the finals of the NCAA championship, or been top pros. One of them was number 1 in the world in doubles for a couple of years, who came to Stanford with no financial aid. And that's the most valuable player to me, to go along with the 4.5 guys that had this scholarship.
So you wouldn't, because I have a scholarship with you, you wouldn't put me ahead of the guy who didn't have a scholarship right there. So because if
you are the better player and you're not playing, my team's not going to do as well. I might not have a job. My team doesn't do as well as it can. So it's really important, especially with men's sports, where it's not so much the full scholarship, but the sports are divided up amongst several players, especially in baseball. Stanford has very few full baseball scholarship players. Most of the spouses.
Correct.
As an example. And but it doesn't matter if you're getting more or less than your buddy, fellow infielder or outfielder, whoever it might be. If you're the better player, you're going to play. It's the coach's job that the best players be on the field. And sometimes players get hurt, or a bunch of players on scholarship graduate. Many times I was able, without any promise of such, because I never really knew for sure what was going to happen, but someone would work their way into a scholarship as a scholarship aid became available. So many of my players who came on those scholarships ended up getting some scholarships.
Some part of that. Excellent. So that's very good for people to know right now, because a lot of people have the mentality, I have to get a scholarship in order for me to play. And in many occasions that, like in your case, I always say, I've heard in the past that says, if they don't pay, you don't play. I don't think that's the note right now.
You're not going to last as a coach very long if you're not playing your best players, because you're not going to do as well as you would if you were playing your best players. So I think that's critical to understand, especially in sports where they're not fully funded. And I think that's really important to understand. I think there's another thing, Ronnie, besides scholarships, that's so important. In colleges, we have different divisions. Division I has the most number of scholarships. Division II offers scholarships, not as many as Division I for each sport. I forget what it is in tennis, but it's not as many as they do in Division I. And Division III doesn't offer any scholarships at all. But some of the very best schools educationally, and after all, that's why you're in school, are in Division III. And not only that, there are a lot of Division III tennis programs that can be Division I programs.
Without a question. That's what I always say to the parents and to the athletes. I love Division III, especially if you have a good GPA. If you have a good GPA and you're looking to play at the collegiate level, D1, D2, D3, there's not much of a difference between them. At least, if we talk about football, maybe basketball, they are the major 2 sports. But correct me if I'm wrong. I say all the time, go to Division III, because they're looking for athletes no matter what. And if you have a good GPA and a good SAT, they will be able to give you, a very good, 80, 90, maybe a full ride because of the sports as well, even though it's not an athletic scholarship. So
financial aid scholarships, of course, and or otherwise. But it pains me to hear people say, and I'm a D1 coach, and I played D1.
Mm-hmm.
Big freaking deal.
Mm-hmm.
It really pains me to hear people say, or parents say, yeah, my kid got a Division I scholarship. I mean, that's not the purpose of going to college, and there are schools with just as good education and many times better athletic programs that are not in Division I. So, and in fact, I had the good fortune to teach 4 years in a junior college. Mm-hmm. And just because I went to Stanford, believe me, I respect the education that junior colleges offer. At Foothill Junior College, which was new when I started out coaching and teaching there, we had the same textbooks in the junior college we had when I was a student at Stanford a couple of years earlier. Same textbooks, smaller classes, taught by full professors, not teaching assistants. So don't look down at junior college. If you're coming to the States for the first time, or you're a little bit behind academically, you got to do a little bit to bring your grades up, or maybe you really must get a scholarship and you missed out the first time around. Absolutely look at a junior college as a chance to improve your grades and improve your abilities in your sport, and then transfer to a 4-year college and get your scholarship if that's critical to you, and you'll come out way ahead.
Way ahead. That I have. This is so good that you mentioned that, Coach, because I keep saying to the guys, hey, junior college is an open door. Junior college can open many doors for you in the future. Absolutely. And academically speaking, I had opportunity to go to Orange Coast College right there in Orange County, and they have a great program. Yes, they have a great swimming program, baseball program, football. I mean, they have everything. It is a great program in order for you to jump into a 4-year degree. And you probably ahead of many other guys, we are playing in Division I or maybe Division II, because they're not playing. As freshmen, they're not going to be probably starting at the team right now. So
that's right, and that brings up a good point. I think it's really important to be realistic, and this is where your job's hard, because everyone as a parent think their kid is God's gift to the athletic world, whatever it is. And many times they overestimate their ability, and in so doing, they put a tremendous amount of pressure on the young person. And you get the parents who think that, man, my kid gets this play to be really, really good, and he might not even have a spot on the team. And I think as a parent, and especially as a young person, it's really important to be realistic about where you're looking in terms of your ability. Regardless of what your private coach tells you, the private club coach, your private coach, your parent, you better be sure you fit in that place. And the first thing I would ask a coach when I contact a coach, or when as a service I do it for someone, the first thing I would say is I send along my transcript and my record, so I know roughly what kind of ability I have. In tennis, it's a little easier. Track and field, swimming, a little easier because you have times. Golf, you have scores. You can measure people a little easier. Be sure that those people measure up to you and are not too far ahead of you. When you decide to go somewhere, if you really want to play sport, I would base it on the fact the head coach, hopefully he'll still be there 2 months later when you enroll, the head coach says, yes, I promise you a spot on the team for at least 1 year. And that gives you the green light. You know you're going to be on the team. You don't have to try out. Be very wary of places they say, yeah, you can come and try out and see if you make it, because realistically, that probably is not going to happen. And even if it does, you don't know it's going to happen, and it may destroy your college experience because what you dreamed you were going to do didn't materialize. You weren't quite good enough. We're very lucky in my sport in tennis. They have a thing now called Universal Tennis Rating. And it's irregardless of age or even gender. But you get a rating of 1 through, I think Roger Federer is a 17 or something like that. I have a granddaughter playing college tennis in the East right now, and I think her rating, I don't know what it is. It must be 7.0 or something like that. Pretty good player, 6.5 or somewhere in there. The Universal Tennis Rating system in my sport has been really, really good, because when I was coaching, everyone used to play in the same age group in all the same tournaments. So I could go by a ranking of these players in their competitive season against each other, not only in their own section of the country, but as they got good enough nationally. So I would recruit based largely on the ranking. And I could tell whether or not based on a ranking, someone most probably would make my team. I would miss out on a late bloomer, someone who developed late once in a while, but I never went wrong by giving financial aid to someone who had a high ranking ever. And because there's something inside that guy that has proven that he can be a winner. He's winning in his age group. He's playing, beating something inside him, no matter how good he looks, how funny his strokes look. There's something inside him that makes him a winner. And that's a big thing. And in my sport, where you don't have a time or a distance to measure, you have to look at heart, and that's the best way you can find it.
You have to look at the heart.
Well, that also goes with UTR. And so now when my granddaughter was looking around, I said, and my grandson before that, I said, you know, if you play enough tournaments and you're going to get a UTR ranking pretty easily. And then you go to the website of the school that schools you're interested in, and all those players, even the ones from foreign countries, have UTR rankings.
Yes.
So they'll have their whole team a UTR ranking. You can look at that ranking and be realistic in what you decide to do. You can say, if I'm a 5.5 and everyone there on the team is a 6.0, I'm not going to put 6.5. I'm not going to play. So therefore, I'm wasting my time. You don't need a parent telling you what you can do. You can look at it yourself. You can be realistic about what you're doing in my sport now. It's a good thing. And I think that's the biggest single thing I would look for and recommend to anybody. And
by the time that you're going to recruit, that's the single thing you will look first before anything.
And every school, everyone in a team has a UTR rating. And if the top two ranking ratings are players who are seniors, maybe there's going to be some things below that. But that makes you be realistic about where you're thinking. And I wouldn't even bother writing the coach if I were below all the players, or if I wanted to start, if it was really important to me to start. I would take the starting players and see what their ranking was. I might make the team, but a lot of personalities are different. For me, I just wanted a chance to play with the good players. I didn't have that in the farming community that much. But when I went into college, I had good practice every day, even though I wasn't starting. And I got better for it. Other people would get discouraged because they're not starting and wouldn't improve over a course of 3 or 4 years. For me, a different kind of personality that worked great to have that opportunity. But you have to measure yourself too. You will improve, but don't kid yourself in the fact you're automatically going to move up just because everyone else is going to improve as well.
Everybody else is going to improve, definitely. And for you to recognize an athlete that it could go to the professional level. It could go. Do you recommend it from high school directly to the professional, or you recommend them to go to the university and then jump into a professional or to the ATP?
That's a great question, Ronnie. When I started, professional tennis was just starting. Open tennis started in 1968. I started coaching in the fall of '66. So I started coaching before that. In fact, after college tennis, for the players on my team, we were a fair team, but we weren't very good. And a professional career was not something you could relate to. So I come in as a young, raw coach, said, okay, guys, we're going to win the national championship in a couple of years. They look at me like I'm crazy. I was trying to coach with a goal as my goal that they couldn't relate to. So as a coach, I learned right away, I better make my goal something they have to relate to and can buy into. Otherwise, I'm going to lose them. And I did lose them. They're out there getting sunshine and getting tan and just getting a couple of hours out of the library and having fun and hitting, giggling. But that was not what I wanted or the environment I wanted. And they were great guys, but they weren't going to go very far with their tennis. So gradually we had to get better players. And my big breakthrough was Roscoe Tanner in that regard. Now, Roscoe came to Stanford and was in the NCAA finals freshman that year. Freshmen became eligible for the first time. They couldn't play until that year in 4 years as a freshman. They had to play on a freshman in all sports. They opened that up, and Roscoe could play as a freshman. He got the NCAA finals as a freshman, and he got the NCAA finals in singles as a sophomore, and he got the semifinals and lost in 5 sets as a junior. In other words, he was the best player in college tennis year after year after year, essentially for almost 3 years. And by that time, 1971, 71, 72, there was starting to be an opening in pro tennis for these young guys coming out of college. So it started to be a choice when I was recruiting, if a guy, I wouldn't waste my time recruiting somebody and offer him a scholarship and then have at the last minute have him go turn pro. So it was a waste of time for me. I lost my scholarship then. No one else could use it. So I was very careful to recruit guys I felt would only be going to college for at least a year. Now, to answer your question, Roscoe came to me at the end of the NCAA championship his junior year. We just barely lost that championship. We were close for the first time. We were in the hunt. We just barely lost it to Trinity University of Texas. He said, Coach, my dad and I want to take you to dinner tonight. This is in Athens, Georgia, at the site of the competition. I said, okay. But my radar was going up because I knew the agents were talking to him. Agents then wanted to represent the next great American hope. And get him before some other agent got him and signed him to a contract. So I tried to talk him out of it at the dinner when he told me they decided he was decided to go pro. I tried to talk him out of it. And he was the only guy I ever tried to talk out of it. From that point on, I never tried to talk anyone out of it again. My job was to get them to make them as good as they could. A lot of times I felt someone wasn't ready, but they turned pro and went out and did very well. Other times I thought the guy was a lock to do well, and he didn't do as well. So you don't really know how someone's going to adapt to that life and to the pro circuit. The advantage tennis has is you can play in professional events and get a professional ranking as an amateur. So before you turn pro, you have a pretty good idea how you stand. And you know also historically, if you're not in the top 100 and you're traveling all the world chasing these ranking points, you can get into better quality of tournament and get more prize, be eligible for more prize money. It's expensive. And you're not going to be able to make a living at it. And you're traveling like crazy. It gets old pretty fast. You give yourself a couple of years. If you're not in the top 100, you forget it. You get in the top 100, you better get up pretty fast at 75 or so, and then you can start doing okay.
So, and so how was his pairing as well with John McEnroe? I mean, how long did you coach him?
Frankly, John was a good. He wasn't our top best junior player as an American. He was a good junior player, but not our best. One of our best, but not our best. And he was on the United States team that went to Wimbledon representing the United States.
Yes, I remember.
And there were about 6 players who got straight into the junior draw, but that wasn't until the second week of Wimbledon. And in his last semester of high school, there were a series of tournaments around the New York area, which were pro tournaments, but he could play in them as an amateur. And he was playing against guys like Stan Smith, Charlie Passerell, some pretty good players and doing okay. And so he got into the qualifying at Wimbledon and led him in the qualifying, which starts early on. And he not only qualified for Wimbledon, he kept winning in the main draw. So when the junior event started the second full week of Wimbledon, he was still playing in the men event. And but he had committed to Stanford, but it doesn't mean anything. He could still turn pro in the summer. He went all the way to semifinals of Wimbledon before he lost. And then he came home in the United States and he played the pro tournaments all summer long and did a good job. Never took a week off. Did a really good job. Was a bona fide pro. I didn't think I was going to see him. I thought for sure he was going to turn pro. But he did honor his commitment. He came to Stanford and played 1 year. And then, of course, at the end of that year, he won the national championship in singles and as a team and was out the door in a hurry. But I'm surprised, frankly, he even came. He has as much success as a junior.
Wow, that's good. And you won 17 championships with the NCAA in Stanford.
My players won 17 championships, yes.
Well, you coached them. Well, that's good. That's a good note. But you coached them for 17 years right there. Out of all these 17 championships, which one is the one that you say, oh my God, this was the most impactful for me right there?
That's hard. I remember a couple we might have won, we lost, probably more than some of the ones we won. I think one of my best teams didn't win the championship. It was a really good team. I think in that team, all 6 starters ended up being the top 100 in the world, and about 3 of them were in the top 2 in the top 10 and 3 in the top 50, something like that. It was a really good team. We didn't quite win it then. But we had I had 3 undefeated teams in those 17 years, of the 17 championship years. One of them was 1978, and that was a team John McEnroe was on, the defending champion NCAA champion. Matt Mitchell played number 3 that year behind John and a really good Northern California compatriot, friend of his, Bill Mays. That had great depth all the way down the line. At number 6, fighting for number 6 were a guy who later became top 100 in the world and a guy who later became top 40 in the world. So that they were trying to make the last spot on the starting team, and it was a very deep team. Then you fast forward 20 years later to the third of my 3 championships teams, but just say that were undefeated. And this team had the Bryan brothers, who are the all-time great doubles team. They had a local guy named Ryan Walters, who was a great player, Paul Goldstein, a great player, and a guy playing alternating at number 6, 5 and 6, who ended up winning the NCAAs 2 years later. So that was also, and becoming a top 100 player. So that team was good too. And in its day, that was a very good team. I think that team we played 6 singles matches in college tennis. We played 24 matches. So whatever 24 times 6 is, 142, whatever it is. Of all of those matches, we lost, I think, 2 individual matches, maybe 3.
Wow.
3 guys, in other words, 3 guys were undefeated the whole year.
So you say you did win, the 17 championship.
Competition, that team did a great job and was really, really good team. So, and a very easy team to coach. Just Paul Goldstein, coach at Stanford now, is a leader in that team, and the Bryan brothers, of course, are great team players. And so that was a very. I turned to my assistant coach. We had assistant coaches and later to become our head coach following me. And I said, John, never forget this year, because you're never going to have a year where you have a group of guys. I rotated the lineup that year. I had 4 guys who could have played number 1, and they didn't want to play each other for their spots. They were too good of friends. So I said, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play each one of you at number 1 6 times, each one of you at number 4 6 times, 3 6 times, 2 6 times. You're going to play each position throughout the year an equal number of times. And here's the schedule. Nice. This is 1st of February. I'm going to tell you now what you're going to be playing in March and April and May. So you might be playing number 4 in the first weekend in May against our rival Cal, because that's what it says here in the list I'm giving you right now. But you might be playing better than whoever's number 1 now, because during the course of the year, guys go up and down. You might be playing number 1. You might be really our number 3 player at that particular time. Can you guys handle this? Can you stick with this all year long and stay together and not complain and bitch? And they did. And it was amazing.
Nice.
And you can never do that with a team full of great players usually, because ego is important, but an ego can
most definitely
if it gets too big. And
so what would be the first thing? The first thing when you see a player, you say, okay, I want to recruit that guy. What is it? The stroke? What is it that caught you attention?
I don't care how good a stroke is or how bad the stroke is. I want to know what he's done in competition with his peers. The first thing I want to look at is the transcript, and test scores. See if there's any chance for admission. Stanford is a very difficult school to get into. It's like Harvard or Yale, Princeton. And if you get into Stanford, you can get in anywhere. So that makes my job easy, because all of a sudden my pool of maybe the top 10 juniors in the country who are high school seniors, maybe it's narrowed down to 1 or 2 guys that have a chance for admission, let alone get in. So I have to be sure that if that fellow gets in, or those 2 of them get in, that I get them. Once they get in, I have to get them to be successful. And we were lucky that we were able to once we got established.
Excellent. And you recommend, so you wait into their junior, or that you wait into their senior in order for you to make that decision?
I started watching them. Well, people get their growth spurts at different times. So to what a guy does at 12, because he's bigger than everyone else and he grew fast, might not be anywhere near what he's going to be like when he's 16. So in tennis, there are age groups. There's 18 under, 16 under, 14 under. So I started looking at them, and they're ranked by how they do in their section. And then for me, how they do out of their section when they get good enough to leave their section. And nationally, they're ranked. Now there's even a third area called Itf Rankings, where it's harder to rank them. It's harder to be accurate in judging them how they do in the United States, because now they're playing not only in their age group, there might be 16 playing in 18 unders. So not playing against their peers. They used to all play against their peers. they might not play the same tournaments. Used to all play the same tournaments. They might be taking time off from school, been studying online, allowing them to play some of the international junior tournaments, trying to get an international junior ranking to get into Junior Wimbledon, the Junior French. So they might not even be going to school. So it's a whole different ball game now. And again, I would really go on the rankings that I had. For me now today, it'd be more the UTR as an example. Because that's universal throughout the world, and not how good the guy looked, but for me, I never really looked at video. You can stage a video, you can look good, you can look pretty, but why does a guy win? The video tells me, oh, this guy's a pretty player. Big deal if he can't win a match. So I want to see what he does in competition, and if I don't have time to go all over the country or world to watch him in competition, then I want to just see what his results have been. And that's how I recruited.
Excellent. So without a question, the ranking is the most important key for you, of course, and the transcripts.
And then I would miss someone who came on late. He didn't get his growth till he was 17 years old. I might miss a guy who matured late, but I never was wrong. I never gave a scholarship to a guy or a partial scholarship to a guy who didn't prove to be worth that in the end.
Got it. Well, and what about international athletes? How do you look international athletes? Have you ever recruited an athlete from out of?
Interesting. When I was at junior college, my top player, my second year, was a German fellow who went to transfer into USC, which had a great program at the time. He got to the quarterfinals of the NCAA championship when he went to four-year school. The next year, I had a Mexican Davis Cupper, Raul Contreras, who was a great young player, and he went on to San Jose State, got the round of 16s and national championship. So I had some foreigners in junior college, and I had some foreigners on the team at Stanford, but I never gave a scholarship to a foreign player. And the reason I didn't is because I was able to get the top Americans. And so, I had a couple of guys, one from Columbia, who was a Davis Cup player there, but he came on his own to Stanford without financial aid, as an example.
Okay.
I think if I couldn't get and when I got the top American, I knew their families, and I just, other things make you take the American, but I didn't have anything against foreigners, as my junior college background will say. And we had some good foreigners on our team. Really good ones, like the Davis Cup player from Columbia, and another one, really good junior player from England. Couple.
Well, and you mentioned something is important, because you're talking about Stanford. It's Stanford, it's Yale, it's Harvard. I mean, you're talking about the major universities where you want to get the top players at the national level. You want to get those players right there in order for you to promote the sports, maybe even more. It'll be, because at the international level, I see it. I mean, I know in my country we didn't have many professional tennis players here in United States that came here to United States. We got golfers, we got soccer players, we have all that, but not tennis. And I know that we have a guy that they did good in Wimbledon and everything else. But if I'm an international athlete and I say I want to go to Stanford, what do I have to do in order for me then to be?
Well, Stanford is taking more international athletes on scholarship now. I think our top players are from Argentina, maybe, and there are several top players. We have a fellow from Poland on scholarship. Stanford is taking more top international students now, and I would go. I must say, I did recruit a couple of players foreign. I recruited Guillermo Vilas, one of the world's best players from Argentina, but he didn't go to college. I also spoke with Bjorn Borg, and he obviously didn't go to college either. So those are two of the world's best players. So I was not above that. I would say this. I was, first of all, we were all foreign at one time in the United States. We all came from somewhere else.
Well, thank you.
And people seem to forget that. We came here, our ancestors had a chance. They worked for it, became citizens.
Yes.
In all my years of coaching, rarely did I ever see anyone in tennis who I thought bastardized the system. They came, they were good students, they were good citizens. Many of them stayed in the country, became citizens. A lot of them are coaching college teams now. It's good for the teams to have diversity of foreigners on the team. It's just it's the way the world is. A very small world right now.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
I think, in foreign countries, there's just not the opportunity to go to college and play sport as there is in the United States. It's a very unique system. It's a wonderful opportunity for these kids.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I want to do, because as an international athlete, I would love to bring this a little bit more out there, because out of the United States, like you mentioned before, right now, we don't have no knowledge. And it happened to me in baseball. I didn't have no knowledge. I knew back in the day that I could come here to the United States, academically speaking. I didn't know that I could come here and play baseball or get a personal scholarship because of baseball, even in a junior college. I didn't know that, So, and most of the people, I know there is plenty. I have been in a few countries, and I've seen very good athletes out there that didn't have no knowledge at all. And
that's for your service, Ronnie. That's one area where you serve, what you do is so important, because you make people aware of this opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I would, in that same breath, I would not, having coached in a junior college, I would not underestimate the value of a junior college. Maybe your English is not quite up to par yet. You're a little afraid of your English in a four-year university. Mm-hmm. So you go to junior college, you work on your English skills. Junior colleges don't, for the most part, have scholarships. But on the other hand, many times the coach can help you live with a family, so you don't really have that. And junior colleges, for the most part, are not private; they're public, so there usually are very few fees involved.
Yes.
Maybe you can have a part-time job while you're there, and you also get a chance to improve a lot. Right. And United States coaches get a chance to see your record in junior college, what you've done. Did you win the state championship? What have you done? And so I think that I think as a foreigner, sometimes if you don't quite think you can make it ability-wise quite yet, maybe you haven't grown in the game, haven't had a chance to have the competition you could otherwise just by where you're from, or you want to improve your language skills, get a little feel for the American college system. Mm-hmm. Don't underestimate junior college for a year or two. Certainly.
I love that advice, Coach. I love that advice, because I have talked to many international athletes, and saying the same piece that you're saying right now is, you know what? English is tough language. You need to learn before you make a commitment into the 4-year university. You have to go to a junior college, stay there for a good 2 years, improve your language, improve your sports, and rank right there in the sports in order for the 4-year universities to give you a shot right there. That is so important. I'm thankful that you mentioned that, because it is important for people to know that there is an opportunity out there. And I know that, there is 8 million high school student athletes in the United States total. 8 million. And high school, like me, is a yearly basis is 8 million. And only not even 8% of those will play at the collegiate level.
I think, Ronnie, another thing we do too is we get a little bit hung up on the different divisions. There's several divisions. Of course, there's junior college, 2-year education, 1 or 2 years of junior college. Mm-hmm. There also is NAIA. Mm-hmm. A possibility. Not a lot of schools, but they have scholarships. Mm-hmm. And in the NCAA, there are 3 different divisions. Mm-hmm. Division 1 has more scholarships than does Division 2. Mm-hmm. But there's very good Division 2 schools in every sport. And Division 3 doesn't have athletic scholarships per se, but there are other means to get financial help. There are some great schools in Division 3, and for my sport, some great tennis programs. Yeah. In fact, many of the top programs in the country, many of the Division 3 programs can beat many Division 1 programs. So don't get hung up on the ego of Division 1.
Beautiful.
See where you fit the best and what fits you the best as a person.
Excellent. Because in Division 3, we go back to Division 3. Out of the top 10 academically speaking best universities in the United States, 74 are Division 3. Academically speaking, 74 are Division 3. So if you academically speaking good, D3 is a great opportunity right there for the athletes, without a question.
Totally agree.
Yeah, without a question. And talk to me a little bit about your mindset, how you work the mindset of the athlete because you have different temperatures, you have different mentalities, a culture. How you control that as a coach?
Well, first of all, you have to recognize everybody's different. In your own family, you have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of those kids is different.
Mm-hmm.
Different likes, different hobbies, different abilities, different looks. They're just different. And then you take a team from all over the country, or maybe even all over the world, as is the case in most tennis programs in the country, all over the world. It's just a melding of backgrounds. And as a coach, my job or a coach's job is to find out, first of all, you have to understand that everyone has to be treated a little bit differently. You don't have to treat everyone the same, especially in a sport like mine. I don't have to put in an offense like I would in football for this particular game. So if I have a guy who's really tired, he's got a big test tomorrow, I can give him a day off. Whereas in football or basketball, that's going to affect the practice for everybody gearing up for the game that weekend.
Yes.
So I can have more flexibility that way. I really think that my biggest job is to find out what button to push in what situation with which person. Mm-hmm. And what works for you, Ronnie, might be very different than what works for me because we're different people. Mm-hmm. And if you can do that and have your guys build a trust in each other, that they're all going to be competing their hardest when it matters, then I think you have a team that has a chance to do something.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Coach, thank you so very much for your time. Thank you for giving me, this knowledge.
Well, Ronnie, I turn it right around. I'd say thank you for the service you're providing and good luck with this. And if I were still coaching, maybe one day I would have an opportunity to have one of your recruits on my team. So
yeah, well, don't you worry. We'll get somebody in Stanford. Don't you worry about it.
All right. I'm going to hold you to it.
I got good especially girls, GPAs are above the 4s all the time. The SATs, great ACTs, soccer players. I have a few soccer players. They yes. love this, and I keep knocking the door. You never know, when we can get an open door in Stanford and Yale and Harvard. I'm new in the market, literally. I mean, I'm still, a good, the NCAA certified my service, which is very good.
Yes.
And from that, I'm trying to promote academics more than sports, to be honest. To me, if you go to university, you need to finish your degree in order for them to be successful in the future. I'm a big believer nowadays, not back in the days when I was playing baseball. When I was playing baseball, I was another dude, but nowadays, I have 2 boys and my 2 boys, they have to go to college. I have a 9-year-old who is a very quick, a very athletic guy. I love him to death. He plays soccer right now, but I'm totally sure he can play any sport because he's very athletic. I mean, he's unbelievable. And I have a 2-year-old who is a very, fighter. And I think that guy could play football without a question.
You made a really important point, Ronnie. I think that the opportunity for education has to really be valued by the students that go to school who have an athletic ability as well. You're not in college. Technically, you're not in college to become a professional athlete.
Correct.
You don't know whether you can get hurt, whether you can be able to continue or not. You're in college to learn, and education is the reason you're in college. So go to a school that has education programs in areas that you want to major in or excel in. Don't go to school if you want to go into business. You might want to go to a school really good in finance or something like that. Mm-hmm. If you want theater arts, you might want to go to school that's more prone to have a great program in that. Look at it academically very closely, and also as a parent, be sure and give your kids as many options. Have them develop as many options as possible. So prepare themselves. So, in other words, if you can. As a young person, if you take a college prep level of courses, maybe that's good enough for most schools. But some schools like Harvard or Stanford, you can't just take a college prep level and get straight A's. You have to take some advanced placement courses as an example. Well, to have more options, challenge yourself to do that higher level of general education, and that will help you also get more options in the end. So all through life, we want to create as many options as we can for ourselves and increase our chance for happiness that way. It's been a pleasure, Ronnie. Good luck to all you're doing, and thanks for having me on the show. And
it is a pleasure.